So, Mr. Chairman, you can go ahead and start the meeting.
Fantastic. Thanks, Molly. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the time for our meeting. It is January 23rd, 2026. It's 2:02 p.m. and we are convening the meeting of the Joint Executive and Legislative Committee for ACJC. I want to remind members of the body that ACJC is live streaming and recording today's meeting to allow stakeholders and members of the public to access our discussions. The Google Meet has been set to highlight whoever's speaking, so remember to mute yourself unless you're speaking. In addition to the live stream, this meeting is being recorded to ensure compliance with open meeting law. So this time we'll do a roll call. Crystal, can you do that for us?
Absolutely. Director Byers?
Leanna Garcia as proxy for Dave Byers, present via online.
Thank you. Laura Conover? Socia Orozco appearing for Laura Conover. Attorney General Mays? Rachel Mitchell?
Good afternoon, Rebecca Baker appearing for Rachel Mitchell.
Megan Page?
I'm here.
Sheriff Rhodes?
Present.
Chairman Barker?
I'm present, thank you.
And with that, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Fantastic, thank you, Crystal. Do we have meetings or minutes from the last meeting?
We do, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, they were distributed to everyone for the March 29th, 2024 commission or meeting. That was a long time ago for many of you.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, entertain a motion to approve minutes from that date.
I move that we approve the minutes of the March meeting.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes carry it. And I forgot to ask if there was any discussion. I assume there wasn't any discussion on the minutes, so we'll that motion carries. I think the next item on the agenda is to discuss ACJC policy regarding lobbying. And Molly was going to brief us on that policy. There's a written policy through ACJC, and Molly was going to give us kind of a summary and rundown of that. Molly, can you do that for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe I distributed, all of you should have a copy of ACJC's lobbying policy, which is CJC 125. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a look at that. Again, this policy was put into place after the last legislative session, in which we really took a look at what our agency's responsibilities are and what we should be doing at the legislature. And we really want to ensure that we are in strict compliance with federal and state laws with respect to what we do with public funds and what we can and can't advocate for. Really protecting the commission's credibility and remaining as a neutral body, which is also very important. And so first and foremost, I want to state that ACJC is not a lobbying organization. We made that very clear in the policy. Our core role is to provide funding, research, data, and technical assistance to the criminal justice system. Because of that role, the policy really emphasizes neutrality and avoids any activity that could create conflict of interest or the appearance of advocating without the commission's direction. That's always been a very important role. As many of you know, we can in this committee discuss things that we would like to do, but we always have to bring everything forward to the full commission and for their approval and review. So the policy is very clear, and that federal grant funds may never be used for lobbying. I'm not sure everyone knows that, but part of my salary is paid for with federal funding. And so that's why we have to be in alliance with, alignment with 2 CFR 200.450. So, when we talk about that, under any circumstances, I can't be, or anybody in the commission cannot be advocating for or against legislation. We really can't contact lawmakers to ask them to vote one way or another. I'm sorry, are there more people coming into the meeting? All right. So, we just have to be very careful with that. And so, Tony and I have had a lot of conversations about what we can do. What staff can always do without approval from the commission is provide neutral, factual, and technical information to stakeholders and members of the legislature. We can participate in work groups and policy discussions. We can respond to legislative questions and offer non-advocacy testimony when invited. And I think that's basically what is covered in the policy. I know the director may have some things he'd like to add to that. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to have Director Vidali add anything into that perspective.
That'd be great. Thanks, Molly. Tony?
Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. Yeah, I think Molly gave a pretty good overview of the policy. In general, we need to differentiate what staff can do versus what commission members can do. When we talk about the lobbying policy does not apply to commission members. Commission members are free to lobby. They're free to say whatever they want to say. This is really about staff. The policy comes about for a number of reasons. One is we got ourselves into a little bit of trouble on the staff side of the equation, and what we were doing with lobbying. We were writing legislation and we were going out and shopping it around and asking for support for that legislation. That's problematic on a number of levels. Beyond what comments were made at the sunset hearings last year, and certainly there were some valid points made that should we have state employees lobbying that are being paid with state money? That's for legislators to debate. We have some federal restrictions on lobbying. It doesn't prohibit, for example, Molly, if I can use her as an example, from communicating with legislators simply because part of her salary is federally funded. If she were a straight lobbyist or she was doing more actual lobbying work, the fact that she was funded partially out of federal funds wouldn't prohibit her from doing that. We would have to take measures to ensure that that time was accounted for and that it was paid for out of non-federal grant funds. That becomes more and more difficult as we rely more and more on federal funds, which we have done over the last 9 years. And we weren't doing any of that, by the way. We weren't accounting for our time to make sure that we could show federal auditors that anybody who went down the street to talk to legislators was not on federal grant time. But it does allow us to do a number of things. We can communicate commission-approved positions. We can do that via formal statements. We can testify. We can give briefings. As long as we're just the messenger, we're giving the commission's approved position. We can respond to legislators' requests for data or factual information. We can participate in task forces and hearings and discussions. As long as we remain as staff, remain neutral on the issue and just appear as subject matter experts. We can educate stakeholders on policy impact, as long as we're not taking a position. And then we can support the legislative committees process by monitoring bills, providing summaries of those bills, and trying to the best we can, provide what we think the impact is, and then helping to draft position statements that the committee would ultimately take and bring before the commission. I think there's a part of this too that we weren't quite appreciating when it came to lobbying, and that is there are three things that this agency was built for. It was built, in just the quick buzzwords here, it was built for research, it was built for resources, to disseminate resources, and it was built to build relationships and build coalitions. That becomes more difficult to do when you're straight up lobbying and you're taking positions on bills. It's difficult for legislators to use this as a resource and trust our research if they know we're supporting legislation that is in alignment with that research. There were some perceptions that we were withholding federal grant funds to get support for legislation that we were lobbying for. Now, I can tell you we weren't doing that, but I certainly understand the perception. The perception is one of the things that, for me, I was mostly concerned with, is what people will think of us and how that degrades the benefits or the purposes that this agency exists for. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely stayed out of lobbying and talking to legislators about bills. It wasn't that I was above that. It was ethically, I did not believe that was the right thing to do. When we say we have competitive grants, but then we're shopping legislation that some of those potential grantees may oppose, it doesn't look good. And so that, and the fact that I had conversations with legislators that did not like that we were lobbying, and that was why we crafted the policy. I will tell you, this policy closely mirrors what this agency had been doing for many, many years, probably decades, before the previous director took over and sort of changed course. We went down and we signed into bills that the commission had vetted and taken a position on and directed us what that position was. We were simply communicating that down at the legislature. If legislators wanted to meet with us to talk about those positions, we did that as well. It's just we weren't asking or trying to influence anyone's vote on any particular piece of legislation like we were doing sort of the previous 9 years. And that's really where we find ourselves, Mr. Chairman, members, with the policy.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that explanation, both you and Molly going over that. And I think one of the questions I had was, where that line is. And I appreciate that you identified, and that it's clear in the policy under authorized activities that the commission can take positions on legislation and that will be communicated. But beyond that, I think that's where we're going to get into trouble. Is that fair, Tony?
Mr. Chairman, yes. I mean, I think that we've blurred the lines over the last 9 years between a lobbyist and a legislative liaison.
Okay.
And that, I think that happens a lot at agencies, but at ACJC, the communications director and the legislative liaison were one and the same. And that was because what they were really doing was communicating the position of the commission. That's all they were really doing. And not trying to convince anybody to do anything down at the legislature.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. Let me open it up for discussion and questions, because I think it's important that we're all on the same page going forward in this committee, and can give appropriate direction. Any thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah, Ms. Baker.
Yeah, so the way I read the policy under section 3C, I think it is. Am I reading this correctly, that this committee can authorize Molly to sign in and support or oppose or neutral on bills in between commission meetings? So is it your preference that whatever recommendation this group decides as far as we think the commission should support or oppose something, that you want to take all of those votes back to the commission before you do that? Or under 3C, do you anticipate maybe signing in on things in between meetings?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Baker, by the way, it's good to see you, Rebecca. I don't get to see you as much, so it's nice to have this opportunity. The commission, I forget when they did this. I don't know. I think it was not last year, it was maybe the year before, that the commission took the position that they gave the legislative committee, and it was the legislative committee, help me out, Molly, and the executive committee.
Oh, it's
that were
always been,
combined,
yes.
right? That they gave that body the ability in between commission meetings to take a position on behalf of the commission and then communicate that to staff, and staff could communicate that to the legislature because of the timing of when legislation's moving through the process and commission meetings happen. If you had to wait for the full commission to get a presentation from you all, a recommendation from you all, that bill is often in running, and it maybe God knows, maybe it's signed by then. And so in order to recognize that timing challenge, the commission expressly gave the legislative committee and the executive committee the power to act on their behalf. That's a little unusual. That most of our committees, that doesn't happen. But in this one, it did for I think a very good reason. In the past, what often happened was ACJC was taking a position on legislation that was most often run by Sheriff's Association or prosecutors, maybe individual prosecutors like your office, Rebecca, or Sochi's office. That was pretty common for Pima or Maricopa to have some legislation that they wanted to have a legislator drop in a bill. But that was sort of happening before the legislature convened, and we were off and running with introducing bills. That would happen, maybe at the November meeting. And in that process, the legislative committee would meet, they would hammer out any language, they would bring that to the full commission, they would vote on it, and staff would have a position day one of the legislative process. But I think what I saw over the last 9 years is a need to weigh in on some way on bills that were making their way through the process, instead of just relying on individual agencies to weigh in on those bills, like our county attorney's offices or our sheriff's offices or our PDs, but to include the commission in weighing in on those as a body. And so it's a long-winded way of answering your question, Ms. Baker. The intention was to still maintain the ability for the committee to act on behalf of the commission if they so chose to continue that.
Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Tony. Sheriff Rhodes?
Hey, I have some thoughts I'm just going to kind of throw out there about all of this and digest it and think about it. But I think the legislative committee is fantastic. I think what we ought to be doing is providing information to the legislature. Legislators request information. This is supposed to be a body that gathers and maintains and disseminates data, and that's what we do. They can come to us, we can provide data, we can provide answers to things, but I don't think certainly the staff shouldn't be lobbying or taking positions, and I don't even necessarily agree that the commission as a whole needs to be taking positions. And the reason why is that there's so many, it's a cross-section, a diversification where we're all here together to talk about a common goal, but individually we all have our own lens. It's very unlikely that we're going to get Ms. Page and Mr. Barker and Rachel Mitchell and myself to all agree on everything all the time, or even a lot of the times, because your fidelity is to your own discipline. And so if we were to just remove the idea that we're going to take positions, unless perhaps it was unanimous, that we were going to take positions on legislation and just treated this as a body in which we meet, we generate data, we facilitate discussion, we provide information. Everyone on this call, everybody on that commission is part of an association that's lobbying down at the legislature. My goodness, there's plenty of lobbying being done. We could eliminate the entire burden on staff. We could eliminate the burden of the commission members feeling like they were, politicking each other to get support for a bill and say that it's ACJC that supports it. And we could just sort of make this a politics-free zone, so to speak, but we can provide information and we can provide data and we can provide statistics and stick to the core mission. That's my thoughts about this at the outset.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Tony.
Chairman, Sheriff Rhodes has it exactly right. That's what the policy was intended to do, to put staff in that position. I hear him taking an extra step about the commission as a body, and that certainly is up to the commission. But he is right that I do remember many years ago, there were times where the commission as a body would take a vote, and you might have had some dissenters. They were the losers in the vote because it was majority rules, and it was that voice that was carried forward to the legislature. But I also remember there were times where the dissenting voice was so important, maybe not number-wise, but it was such a good point that when we would go to the legislature, our liaison would sign in neutral just to give that perspective of the commission thinks in these various ways. That are not necessarily in alignment. There are differences in the way they think. We took the opportunity to communicate that to legislators so that they had an idea about what the overall commission thought about an issue and not just a majority rule situation.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Tony. Other thoughts, other discussion on this point? I think that's good feedback, and Sheriff, I appreciate what you said about that. I tend to agree with you. I mean, there's plenty of lobbying going on. We have avenues to get messages across to legislators. I guess my question would be for our agendas. I mean, we'll be talking about proposed legislation here in a moment. What action are we asking to do? I mean, are there going to be points where we're just deciding which bills are very important to us as a committee or a commission, and then asking staff to provide information to legislators? This is not, I've never been part of this commission before, so I'm not sure what this looked like in the past, but Tony, maybe you could speak to that too. What does it look like in practice?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, you have a role here, right? It's a very important role, especially for us as staff. We need to be led here, and so that role is we need you to review proposed legislation that affects the criminal justice system. We need you to filter and prioritize issues for the commission's consideration, or what issues staff should pay attention to. We could get overwhelmed with the number of bills that we're trying to keep track of and do something with. And so we need that prioritization and filter from this committee. We need recommendations on official positions, whether that's because you've been given the authority by the commission, or you want to take positions and recommend them to the commission on particular legislation. We need the committee to do that. And probably for me, the most important part is we need you to provide interpretation of legal and statutory changes. We are not the experts in doing that. And you have the professional expertise. We need you to use that professional expertise and help us understand what these legal or statutory changes are that are being proposed. And then finally, it ends up, you direct us on what to communicate on these approved positions. And you know, we can figure out how to best do that, whether it's to write a memo up or a letter or go testify and just communicate that position. We can work through that with you, but those I think are the really important things that this committee has to do for us, and provides that perspective to the legislature and what the commission's voice is.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Tony. Okay. If there's no other discussion on this item, we're going to move over to our review of key criminal justice legislation. Molly, can you walk the committee through some of the legislation? I know that you sent out that document with some of the key legislation we're looking at today. Why don't you walk us through that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we begin that, I also want to make note that a few people joined the meeting, and I'm not sure if they were on our list of people, but Nick Debus is here to represent the Attorney General's office. And we have Chief Stahl, who has also joined us by phone. And then I think, is there Milan Tyson, AGO? I can't read that very well. Oh, yeah. So wanted to make sure those individuals were noted in the record for their attendance.
Great. Thank you, Molly.
So, Mr. Chairman and members, moving on. Yes, I have distributed up all of you this very, very comprehensive document. We'll be sending this out weekly. Right now, it's relatively bland in the sense of the colors. We normally will color code things as far as things that are moving along quickly, things that might impact you, things that directly impact ACJCs. We've been doing this for years. This is a point of courtesy. It's not something that we have to go through and exhaustive. I give it to all of you as a point of discussion. So if there's a bill on there, as Director Vidali mentioned, that you want to discuss because there's some concerns to it, there's impacts, that's what this document will provide for you. I will usually pull out some bills that are critical to bring to the forefront for you to be aware of. Now, we just had our commission meeting last week, so you're familiar with the 3 bills that I'm about to just kind of give you an update on. I do like to always say this is, we're 12 days into the legislative session, so we're very early on in session. To date, 1,325 bills have dropped. And we are monitoring about 125 bills right now. So quite a few bills. And some of those will drop off as the session goes on. But I just, again, like to make sure you have all of those bills at your fingertips as discussion points. So just real quick, House Bill 2148 that has been introduced by Gail Griffin. That's the one that requires separate accounting and legislative oversight of non-custodial federal monies, allows limited spending authority without specific appropriation, adjusts appropriations based on actual funds received, and takes effect January 1st of 2028. This bill was heard in House Appropriations, and it did pass 11-7. So before I move on from that bill, are there any questions or any insights anyone wants to provide on that? Hearing none, I will move on. So House Bill 2418, this is Representative Wynn. This is the $600,000 that was for the 5 major incident task forces in the state. I believe that one was referred to House Judiciary, I believe, House Appropriations and House Rules. I'm missing a bill on here. I don't know why it didn't print out. Before we move on from that bill, are any questions regarding that particular bill? Any discussion? Okay.
Right there. Thanks, Molly.
Yep. There's one more bill, and this is the one, and I don't know why it didn't print out. My printer apparently has a issue with printing out this last page of my notes. This one is the bill that deals with the 8% cap on administrative dollars for grants. I believe,
HB 2115.
so HB 2115, and has that gotten assigned to a committee, Eshta?
Yes, it's scheduled for the just scheduled for the House government hearing.
So it's scheduled for House government, but has not had a hearing at this point. So that bill was one that was brought up for discussion at the last commission meeting. Obviously, the implications of that one would put a cap on our administrative dollars for grants that we administer. Is there any discussion or any insights on that particular bill?
Molly, can you explain again how that would impact what you do, what this commission does in terms of grants? I know we talked about this at the last commission meeting, but
Mr. Chairman, I'll take a shot at that
Yeah.
one. So this appears to be capping any public fund source that includes administrative monies. I don't think it differentiates between state monies or federal monies. If there's an administrative allocation or allotment, it is setting a cap on that at 8%. The challenge to our agency and probably a number of state agencies that administer federal grants is many federal grants have a 10% cap. That's set by the federal government. It's a grant by grant percentage that they set. I do have some questions. I think there's some complications if some agencies also use have an indirect cost rate, and that indirect cost rate is higher than 8%, or they use the de minimis, which means that you can use a 15% indirect cost rate, and you don't need to get an approved indirect cost rate from your cognizant federal agency, which is the federal agency that you get most of your grant funds from. In our case, for example, it's the Department of Justice. We don't use a indirect cost rate, so that's not a problem for us. The problem for us is just the flat out administrative percentage. For most of our grants, that'll be 10%. There are some grants that are lower. I've seen grants that have an 8% cap. VOCA has a 5% cap. And so it's not necessarily something that's going to shut our agency down. But, you know, the federal government sets most of those at 10% because they've analyzed what it takes to administer grant programs. And for Burn Grant, that 10% is a very good percentage. We do a lot that you don't see and that legislators don't see to administer these grants. And all of those things that we do are based on requirements imposed on us by the federal government. Things like before we grant out money to any agency, we have to do a risk assessment on them. That takes a certain amount of effort. It involves our audit folks that need to, it's basically a financial risk assessment. That's by 2 CFR 200 that we have to, the federal regulation that guides grants, that we have to do that. And so limiting administrative expenses to 8% at some point then impacts your ability to properly administer these federal grant programs. And that's really what it comes down to for us. We'll have, if it's 8%, Mr. Chairman, members, we'll have to figure it out. It's not a good idea. Federal government has figured it out for us. I don't know what the legislator in the bill, where they came up with the 8%, but 10% is there for a good reason.
yeah, thank you, Tony. I mean, that was my question as well. Why did we arrive at 8%? What is the motivation here? I'm not sure, but thanks for explaining that. Molly, did you want to go? Are there other ones that you wanted to touch on?
Mr. Chairman, there's not one, there is a bill that's being proposed to be dropped. We have not gotten, it hasn't dropped yet, and we understand it's going to be dropped probably in the next week. It has to do with the CBNS, the VINE program. They are in need. This program we've been administering for about a year, and is it longer, 2 years?
It might be 2 years.
Okay. And that's where, this is the victim notification program that was put into place. I believe the sheriff's offices have been utilizing that program to notify victims before perpetrators get out of prison, all of that. It's a great program. I know the commission is supportive of it. The difficulty is they are looking at the Victims Comp and Assistance funds for that I believe it's
7.6 million.
7.6 million, to take it from those funds in order to continue standing up the program. That's something that I know we discussed at the last commission. I don't know if Chief Stala, he's on the call right now, wants to talk further about that. But we are talking about potentially doing a fiscal note to
Well,
discuss the impacts.
Mr. Chairman, what we talked about internally here as part of the communication process is when we have a bill that affects money, it's probably a good idea, number one, to understand what it's doing, which is what you're here to help us do. But number two, analyze that fiscal impact, very similar to the way that JLBC does fiscal notes. When they do fiscal notes, they're just they're describing the bill, they're writing the estimated impact of the bill, whether on a fund or on an agency, and then they're providing an analysis that supports that estimated impact. So it's writing about your assumptions on how you got to the estimated impact. We think for issues like this that there's a real true fiscal impact to our agency or our programs. Remember, this money, majority of this money flows out to county attorneys' offices to support the victim compensation programs in those county offices, of which counties get a administrative piece to cover some administrative costs and then money for benefits for victims. We think it would be a good idea to estimate the fiscal impact of that and then communicate that to stakeholders. Certainly in that fiscal impact, it's not taking a position. It's simply saying, if you do this, here's what we estimate it will do to the program or the effect it will have on the fund. We came up with, we sort of worked through the math on this one because we knew it was coming. And where we're sitting today, when we factor in all the expenses that we charge to this fund to support the Victim Comp and Assistance Program, if they took the 7.6 million, we likely would end fiscal year 2027 with a $4.19 million balance. That's okay. It's not going to shut the program down. It's getting us very close to being a cash management problem for us, though. What we like to have is between a 3-month and a 12-month fund balance that equals the size of the program. If you took this down to the fund balance down to 0, who it would impact most is our counties that are supporting crime victims through the Victim Compensation Program, because we would be in what I call a pay-as-you-go situation. This money comes in a very volatile state. It's low 1 month, it's high the next. It's just unpredictable. We would have to wait. We would get reimbursements from counties. We would have to wait till we had enough money to pay those reimbursements, and we couldn't predict when that would be during the fiscal year. So that's a cash management problem. Doesn't mean it shuts the program down. It does mean, though, that the closer we walk from that estimated $4.1 million balance down to 0, we start having concerns and start to need to think about how we're going to pay those county reimbursement bills. I think the larger concern is maybe where they go next. This will be the second year, if they do this, it will be the second year the legislature went to this fund to take multiple millions of dollars from the fund balance. If they take the 7.6 million and it brings us down to a $4.1 million balance, there isn't much room for them to take anything else outside of then us cutting benefits or our victim assistance grant program, cutting those dollars. And so that's where the concern is. I want to be very, very transparent and frank with you. For this year, if they took the 7.6 million based on our projections, it doesn't kill the program, but it does put us back to where we were in 2019 when we started conversations with the legislature to help out. I will note there's one difference, and it's an important difference, but it's one difference that plays in our favor. And that is back in 2019, we weren't seeing revenue growth. Some of those years we were seeing negative, we were losing money. The last several fiscal years, we've seen revenue growth in this fund. It's to the tune of about $93,000, and we've worked that into our projections. That is the one piece of good news, that if they do take the 7.6 million, we are in a bit of a different scenario because revenue is growing year over year. And it has been doing that for the last 5 years, maybe 6 years, Matt. I forget what the trend was on this one. $93,000 is good. It's not, I'd like more. But it's not a terrible position to be in. I'm more concerned with what happens next, because now this is now a fund that maybe legislators have targeted as a very accessible fund that can solve a lot of problems when you don't have a lot of general fund solutions, like I think we're going to have in this budget year.
Yeah. Thank you. Tawny, and is that, I'm sorry if I missed, was there a bill number associated with this? Yeah, or
Mr. Chairman, the bill has not dropped yet. We've
Okay.
just been informed that it will be dropping. We've been told that Senator Kavanaugh is the one that's putting the bill forward. We just haven't gotten the bill yet.
Okay, so we'll have to watch for that. Sounds like. All right, discussion, questions from the committee? And any action the committee would like to take?
Are we going to proceed forward with that? We're going to do the fiscal analysis. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, one of the things we've talked internally, and again, this goes along the lines of what we discussed about what activities the legislative liaison can do. We'll be working on a fiscal analysis that we will distribute, obviously, to all of you as well as members in the legislature. So I see Liana has her name up, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah.
I just dropped something in the chat, Molly. I just wanted to let folks know that I have a hard stop at 3. So if you need a quorum, if you need me to make your quorum, you might want to call any votes before then is all.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Liana, I don't think we're going to be taking votes that I'm aware of, but
Okay.
you might.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just for process purposes,
Yeah.
what direction can you give us as staff if we create these fiscal impacts on sending that to you? What process should we use to get that to you? Because again, time is going to matter here as well. We're going to want to get that word out. But my preference would be, if we create a fiscal impact, that it is vetted in some way by the committee. That the committee has the opportunity to look at it and say, all right, you're on track, this makes sense, or there are things about this I don't understand. Can you explain them to me? I would prefer that before it went out. You know, we blast this out to as many stakeholders as we can. And that way we can say that we created a fiscal impact on a particular bill, and it was vetted by this committee.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. Do we need to take a vote on it, or can we just?
Mr. Chairman, I think you can give us direction on just
Okay.
what you want to do. You can decide that process, and if you want it to come before the committee and you want to vote on it, yeah, I don't know how you want to work that out. But as far as what our role is, we will create the impact and we will get it to you so that you have a chance to review it and give us direction on how to proceed with that fiscal impact.
Awesome. Thank you. Rebecca?
Mr. Chairman, Tony, when do you project that fiscal analysis will be done? Because perhaps you could just email it to us and then we could have another Zoom call to talk about it.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Baker, it will take me some days to do it, not very many days. Probably next week I will have a draft. I know the amount now. We've confirmed that, and that was a point of discussion this morning when we were kicking around what to do. Is, I don't have a bill, but I think this amount has been kicked around enough that I've heard it enough that I think that is going to 7.6 million is going to be the number. It will take me a couple days to do it and make sure it's done well and it's competent and it's complete and thorough. And then I can get it to you maybe by this time next week or sooner that I can get it to you.
Okay, that'd be.
Unless, Mr. Chairman, unless you're going to tell me to do it sooner and then I'll do it sooner.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
It's
I think
timing. So I'll do what you need me.
Tony, that sounds great. I think that's a good suggestion. If you could email that out whenever that's accomplished, and we can plan for a meeting after that time to discuss. Rebecca, is that what you were thinking? Okay. Any other questions or discussion? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Anything else, Molly?
In the legislative part, no.
Okay. All right.
I think we were going to move on to the next item then.
Thank you. I appreciate that brief, Molly. Thanks for providing the information. And I think, are we at the call of the public now? Let me see.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I have too many things on my screen.
It sounds like me.
All right, we're at the call of the public. Have we received any requests to speak today?
Hold on really quick, Mr. Chairman. I am looking at email and I have not received any requests to speak, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, the next agenda item is to set our meeting date, our next meeting date. Just hearing from Tony about getting that data together, and that's going to take maybe a week. We'd want to schedule a meeting after that. How frequently, Molly, Tony, how frequently have these been held in the past?
Mr. Chairman, because in the past we were doing active lobbying, we would meet every Friday at 1:30.
Okay.
I would leave it to this committee to decide if they feel that that's necessary. And with the particular situation that we're talking about, we haven't received a bill number yet, so it might take a week before we'll know if a bill has dropped or not.
Okay.
So you might be looking at the week after next.
Okay. What do people think about a couple of times a month? Sounds like that. Is that, I'm seeing nodding heads. Anyone disagree with that? Okay. And what's the preference with day and time for the folks on the committee?
In the past, I know Liana and Rebecca have participated, and Chief Stahl, they've usually met on Fridays, but I don't know if the morning is better or afternoon. But that's traditionally been the day that everyone has met.
Friday works for me.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Friday mornings, AC2A meets.
Yep.
So that's, I think, part of why we did the afternoons, but.
Okay. Can we do Friday afternoons, Liana?
Yep, it works.
Okay. Seeing a lot of nodding
Do
heads.
you guys prefer 1 o'clock, 1:30? I know some people have said in the past when we've done it later, it's hard because they're either trying to get out of town or what have you. So I don't know if Fridays at 1 o'clock works better for everyone.
Let's say 1 o'clock unless there's some disagreement on the call. Okay, it looks like there's consensus there. So let's do Fridays, 1 PM every other week. So then what would be the next date then, Molly, if we're doing 2 weeks
That
from?
would,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, that would be February 6th.
Okay. Fantastic.
So I will send out, Mr. Chairman, I will send out an invite to everyone on this call for that.
All right. Thank you, Molly. Okay, I think we're through the agenda. And we got the date. And do we need a motion to adjourn, or can I just call it?
In the past, I think you've made a motion to adjourn,
Okay.
and then
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn then?
Move that we adjourn.
All right. All right, we're adjourning. It's Leanna seconding. Thank you. It is, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any want to keep talking? Anybody else want to stay on the call? Doesn't look like it. All right, it's 2:53. We're going to end the call and adjourn. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Molly, and everybody and staff. And good to see everybody. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks,
you
Mr.
too.
Chairman,
Thank you, Mr.
members.
Chairman.
Appreciate